never seen this picture before.
First reaction was like just shock because I've never seen old pictures of Chinatown before, but I feel like there's some sense of familiarity.
This is a unique project because it was done and produced during the pandemic, so we had all the new restrictions to deal with there, and we really wanted to find a way of bringing the collections that we have of our institutions back out into the city and into the Chinatown community, since it wasn't possible to have people coming to our physical locations. As the Director of Special Projects, I have the opportunity to work on exhibitions, programming, special ways of engaging the different communities that the library serves.
As curator of Pacific Rim collections, I oversee a collection related to the history of the Pacific Rim, especially when it comes to Chinese American history. We wanted an opportunity for us to bring the archives from our respective institutions at the Huntington and at the Los Angeles Public Library and bring those archives into Chinatown. And so when we saw this empty lot, we came up with the idea of, oh, maybe we can perhaps showcase a collection here by wrapping a banner around this empty lot.
Well, we were looking at the historic archives of the LA Public Library and at the Huntington, and we realized they had so many amazing stories that you might not realize just by looking at the photos or just by going through the historic maps and menus. And we wanted to find a way to bring those back out into the community here and really tell some of these stories, but through the voices and in the words of the people who've lived this history and who continue to be a part of the community. It's been really amazing to meet some of the people who've had such an intimate experience in Chinatown, whose families grew up here, whose families were among the founders and the builders of New Chinatown, and to hear their personal perspective on these stories. The themes that the exhibit is broken down into, such as exclusion, resilience, opportunity, these are really the themes that kept coming back to us as we were looking through these stories and the materials that we collected through the interviews and going back through the archives.
I think exclusion category is a great place for us to start to let people know about the struggle that the Chinese has to go through in order to establish their presence in their communities here in Los Angeles. It's important for people to realize the history of the Chinese Americans. And so through the documents that we have, the photographs, the rare books, and the manuscript from both institutions, I hope that people will get to learn about history and to learn about the struggles that the Chinese have gone through for so many years and the fight that they have to enact and initiate in order to correct some of those past injustices.
When you walk up to the Central Plaza and you approach the banner, as you're walking along, you'll see that we've got some really interesting historic photos of Chinatown, the way it looked going back to the 1930s when it had its grand opening in 1938, and the celebrations over the years. And if you stop to read what's next to that, you'll get a little more information of what you're looking at, but you'll especially see the stories and the quotes from the people in the community that we interviewed, and you'll start to understand these more personal connections. I think when you do see photos online on our archives or maybe at the library or at the Huntington out of context, it's beautiful, it's interesting in its own way, but you don't have that kind of personal connection that you get through reading or hearing these interviews.
My generation is kind of starting to look back because they're looking back in order to look forward. And there's such an appreciation of what has happened, and they only want to make it great. So I think that this is just the beginning.
One of the things I can say about my father was he was a very positive personality. He never looked back and regretted things from the past, and he was always looking forward, both to improving himself and the fact that the Chinese people here in Los Angeles would be successful.
Challenges of the pandemic have hit the Asian American, the Chinatown community very hard. And then on top of that, very sadly, as we all know, the rise in hate crimes and attacks against Asian Americans and Chinese Americans. It's been very hard for this community. But what we have seen in talking to the people in the community and beginning to share some of these stories is how the resilience that we observed historically amongst the Chinese American population here in Los Angeles continues into the present. You know, that unfortunately some of the hatred, the violence, the discrimination, you see history repeating itself almost in a way.
I think this exhibit is important to me as an Asian American. It's because history repeats itself. This is not the first time in the United States history where Asians or Chinese Americans were persecuted. So starting from the 1850s, when the Chinese came during the gold rush, there was already a lot of violence and state-run discrimination that was geared toward the Chinese already. But I think one thing that has demonstrated throughout is that the Chinese will not be kept down. The Chinese will always come back stronger and better and bigger as part of the community.
But what I would hope that people understand is the challenges that they've faced historically. And the more that we can share some of these stories, I think the more people can understand that these traditions are beautiful.
I want people to come away with an understanding about the origin of this place. I want them to learn more about the historical figures such as Y.C. Hong, Peter Su, who were instrumental in establishing New Chinatown as part of a small group of prominent Chinese Americans at a time who dared to think of an idea where they could construct and design their own Chinatown here in Los Angeles. They want New Chinatown to be available to all Angelenos here. They want people to come to Chinatown to eat at the restaurant, to patronize the store, and to learn about Chinese culture. So they wanted a completely new Chinatown. Part of our mission here is to try to get more people to come to Chinatown and learn more about their amazing chapter in history, about the Chinese struggle in establishing this very special community here in the 1930s, and to learn more about what was there before 1930s when there was another old Chinatown that doesn't exist today, that was demolished in the 1930s and the 1940s to make way for many civic projects such as Union Station.
It's just been so amazing to learn what it took to make this place a reality. In the 1930s, Chinese people in America faced extreme discrimination. They were not able to become citizens. They were not able to legally own property. So the fact that they could pool their resources and their energy and obtain this plot of land and build such an inviting and beautiful development to bring some more positive attention to their community, business opportunities, and improve their way of life. Across the exhibit here in Chinatown, you can scan the QR code and it will take you directly to the online exhibit. There's one for each thematic section so that you can view the video that really speaks more to that theme. And I also want to mention that the website is fully bilingual. So there's a Chinese version of the website and there's QR codes for both so that in either language you can experience the entire exhibition.
I also wanted to say that this project is not possible without the help of the contributors. Contributors such as Caitlin Bryant, Nolan Hong, Pat Suhu Lam, and many others are what makes this project special to us. It is because by being, either current or former residents of Chinatown, they give us a unique perspective on what is it like to be living here, why Chinatown is special to them. And I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight the contributors and to highlight the amount of work that they did to make this project possible for the rest of the community.
Everyone should be allowed and able to celebrate and share their own culture, and there is room for us to coexist and celebrate each other in that way.
We are just part of the American story here, and we wanted to be part of this community to contribute to this nation and to make it a better place.
The online exhibition is at exhibits.lapl.org/Chinatown. That's where you'll find the videos of the interviews that we conducted and more of these documents and the memories and stories. LAPL.org is the homepage for the library and the many services that they provide, both virtually and now in person again, fortunately. And LFLA.org is for the Library Foundation. We're the primary supporters of many of the library's programs and services. And if you want to find a way to support the library, you would go to that website.